All right. Well, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Truth Warrior. My name is David Whitehead, your host. I am here with the great Shawn Buckley, a warrior of our time, constitutional lawyer, freedom fighter, very much involved with the Allison inquiry, which we're going to be getting into today. And I want to be here today to learn about what's really going on, the details about it. I've been hearing a lot of stuff online, a lot of flack from many different angles, and I want to clear it all up and get you, the listener, the information that you need. And so I encourage all of you today to help me out, share this interview out. I know it's going to be fire. We're going to learn a lot today with Shawn. He's very knowledgeable. He's deeply involved. And I got a lot of questions on your behalf for him. So please help me by getting this out as far and wide as you can. Ask your friends to share, your family. This is a conversation that I know people are sick of having about the COVID era, the pandemic, the vaccines, but it is absolutely essential that the truth is known and that justice occurs. And this man is the man in the arena. And so I'm so honored that he is here. So first of all, just want to say a quick welcome to you, Shawn. Thank you so much for jumping for a part 2 on Truth Warrior.
David, really pleased to be here. And this can't go away. So, and I understand why everyone wants to avoid the issue. You know, we were locked down for 2 years, 2 winters, until those truckers showed us what bravery and courage is. And then the government was scared to lock us down. And in the couple of years that followed, like, it's almost like when summer came, like, I just want to go to the lake. I want to pretend this didn't happen. I want to have I want to sit on my dock and have a couple of beers and just pretend that things are okay. And like, that's a trauma response. You know, I had called Theo Fleury as a witness in Edmonton back in March of 2023. And he was talking about, you know, basically how he was sexually abused when he was a young hockey player. But he segued on to COVID and said, you know, like he had stood up. He had basically become this speaker, helping people and all of that. COVID hit. And all of a sudden, everything ground to a halt. Like the rest of he's locked up. And he was finding himself becoming depressed, becoming suicidal, the whole thing. And through his counselor, he came to realize, wait a second, everything that's happening has happened to him before. It's just now the abuser is the government. And he outlines how we were basically all abused, like this classic abuse pattern. So we were all thrown into trauma. And one of the things we want to do is pretend that, like, stuff it and go away. But here's why we can't. And I really wish we could. Like, David, you know, if we could just be assured that, like, nothing like that's going to happen again in the near future. Let's focus on the economy. Let's focus on our kids. Let's just focus on going on. Great. But here's the problem. You know, we don't have a poll in Canada. But in September of last year, Rasmussen did a poll in the United States, which found that 56.6% of Americans believe that the COVID vaccine not caused death, caused significant death. Right? So that's not like, is there the odd person out there that may have died from this? No. Over half of the population there believes it caused significant death. Now, I don't know what the numbers are in Canada, and I'm willing to bet that maybe we're a little more asleep than they are. Because, you know, but it could be close, and we're not even talking then injured. Because one thing that's changed for me is now people that I wouldn't expect are questioning whether the injuries, because there's injuries out there. There are injuries. We all know people that are injured.
I know people, for sure. I know people.
Well, a lot of people believe those injuries were caused by the COVID-19 vaccine. That's not going away. So we have to have this conversation. The other thing is, like, so, I mean, if for no other reason, in that, well, there's really two big reasons. First is an ethical one, is the people that are vaccine injured are treated like modern day lepers. We will not accept that they're vaccine injured. We will not include treatments that they need for vaccine injury. They can be, those treatments are available for other conditions. But in our socialist medical system, where everything is apportioned, and we've come to believe that there's finite resources and we have to put up with this. Well, if it's not approved for vaccine injury, which we don't officially recognize, then they're denied treatments that their doctors agree they have. We'll talk about their abuse later. Like, it's hard to even understand how abused this group feels, but they're dying. They're dying of their injuries. They are suffering terribly. Many of them are now accessing MAID because they can't take the suffering anymore. And we could reduce that or totally turn it around in many cases if we would just accept the truth and then actually start treating them medically for what they actually have. So, we've got that issue. The second issue, why we can't avoid this conversation, if you got, half or more than half of the population that believes that a vaccine caused significant death and or significant harm, there's no trust in the public health. Like your viewers, let's say there was, a legitimate public health scare, and they were strongly encouraging us to take an intervention. Well, many of us, I think myself included, our gut response is going to be, I don't trust you. Well, how can I trust you? How can your viewers trust public health if we actually can't have a conversation about the fact that some of us are injured by the last intervention? And let's look at that in a non-threatening way. Let's have the conversation and let's make changes to restore trust. I remember the blood scandal when people were getting diseases because the blood supply was tainted. So, you go to the hospital and you need a transfusion for whatever reason. And, now you've got Hep C or whatever it is. Well, we wouldn't have that discussion. We knew about it for a long time. And then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of us are reluctant to get blood transfusions. And then we have the conversation, and then we make changes. And then we go on because our confidence in the blood supply was restored because we had the conversation. And then in response to that, we made changes. And we've got to do this. So whether we want to or not, we're not, we've got an ethical duty. We've got this large portion of the population that's suffering and a larger portion of the population that has zero confidence in public health.
That is very logical, very rational to me, Shawn. This is what I personally struggle with when I see the blowback that you guys are getting for this. And I want to come back. I want to do something really quick. I want to introduce people to the Allison Inquiry. We'll go over the website. I have a wonderful video to show everybody that's done by the Inquiry, just to give a little summary. And then I want to talk to you about the two polarities we were discussing off air about you're getting hit from all angles, which is really interesting. But let's just do this really quick. You've got the website right listed there below. It's allisoninquiry.com. You can also go to covidtestimony.com. I'll link everything for everybody. You can go and check it out. And here's the summary of what the Allison Inquiry is all about. So this will be taking place September 8th, 9th, and 10th and 11th, 2026. The Allison Inquiry will be listening to the testimony of Canadians injured by a COVID vaccine. The Inquiry will be broadcast live from Parliament Hill in Ottawa. The Allison Inquiry represents the first time that Canadian lawmakers will be listening to Canadians about their experiences with the COVID-19 vaccines. Isn't that crazy that it's the first time? The Allison Inquiry will be chaired by a Member of Parliament, Dean Allison, and is nonpartisan. Members of Parliament and senators from all parties are eligible to sit down as panel members. The inquiry is being held with the cooperation of the COVID Testimony Association, a not-for-profit setup to assist in running the inquiry. So let's take this moment to show everybody the video, and then I'm going to come back, Shawn. I'm going to highlight those two polar angles of attack that you're receiving. And then I'd love your comments on that. So here we go. Check out this video, guys. We'll come right back. So sign up now to testify, guys. Share your story. Every time, Shawn, that I do shows like this, and I covered the entire thing inside out, forward and backwards during the lockdown era. They locked down the wrong guy over here, because all I did was go full time in trying to investigate what was going on. It was moment by moment, I was tracking it, and so many others were as well, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And I was bringing on doctors, Canadian doctors, doctors from the US, doctors from Europe. And that was how I lost my first 2 Facebook profiles, was literally for just covering medical professionals that had questions about just the policies that were being instituted. We hadn't even been at the vaccine stage yet, right? And at the time, I remember digging back into the literature, because I've been following the health shenanigans going on in the health industry for a long time. Just because of what happened in my own family. I grew up with my mother, told this story before, but my mother was in and out of the hospital my entire life, was treated for every kind of thing you can imagine, was put through the ringer, and, sadly passed away due to heart failure. And I believe there were medical interventions involved in that. And there's many of these kinds of cases, and even outside of the vaccine industry. But the minute you look at the history, if you think back to the swine flu epidemics and some of these other things, where legitimate inquiries took place, and they ended up with pulling those vaccines off the shelf with far less people coming forward, just showing injury, let alone the deaths and the levels that we've seen. And I would say that, and I did a documentary series called Cult of the Medics, getting into the history of these organizations, covering statements by people like Dr. Marcia Angel, who was she was a former writer for the New England Journal of Medicine.
She was the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine.
So you know exactly who I'm talking about.
And also a medical doctor,
editor.
Her book, A Story of Corruption, is a must read.
It's a must read. And that statement that blew me away, and I read it back a while back, and I included it in my coverage, was she was talking about how it's impossible. It was a reluctant conclusion she came to after 20 years of being the editor, that we can't trust a lot of the medical literature because of the conflicts of interest that are there. So you start there and you think, okay, they want trust. They want us to just automatically trust the government, which who the hell trusts the Canadian government right now, let alone back then, or the medical monopoly that has cozy relationships with the big pharma cartels, right? So if they're asking for the trust and then just saying, but don't inquire, don't question, don't challenge. And in fact, if you do, there's going to be harsh punishments and fines and freezing bank accounts, etc. I brought on people like Danny Bulford, many other nurses, Dr. Charles Hoff, others. I went on a whole campaign to try to just say, hey, let's get the other side out to people. That was my inquiry as just a podcaster. And now when I see this inquiry, I get why there's a lot of concern about it. And let me just highlight the 2 angles of attack that I see, and then I'd love for you to just go as long as you want on this. So first one that I see is obviously going to be coming from the sort of normie, elbows up brigade, whatever you want to call it, that is just completely brainwashed by the CBC. And they're just like, there was nothing wrong with what the government did. There was nothing wrong with the vaccines. We have nothing to inquire about. Everybody just go away. You guys are a bunch of crackpots. You're paranoid schizophrenics or whatever they're going to say. So there's that camp. That camp can never be satisfied. And that camp is a very tiny, tiny number, by the way. The other camp is going to be the people that did experience what happened. They do have a lot of questions, and they're a little bit too black-pilled for my taste, because they look at it like, well, look what happened with the trucker commune. You brought up the truckers. I did a documentary called The Truckers Were Right. People can go watch that on YouTube and make of it what you will. But the inquiry that proceeded after that, obviously there was no real justice done, as people saw. They're like, well, nobody was arrested. There wasn't any real scrutiny put on the people that were responsible. Everybody involved has just been promoted up the ranks. Nobody, you know what I mean? There was no justice in that sense. So people look at that as a failure. Whereas when I was covering that, I said, well, this is a battle of public opinion. This is about waking up people living in Canada. And in that inquiry, we heard testimony as Canadians that many people did not get the opportunity to hear. We got to get information out to the general public that otherwise wouldn't have made it out, right? So in that sense, I felt like it was worth doing that, even if it didn't end up the way everybody was hoping. We're dealing with a corrupt, captured government system. What do you expect? But at the same time, we still have to fight this battle. And then when I see you going nonprofit, investing your own money, putting your reputation on the line to do this yet again, and go with this inquiry and listen to the testimony of these Canadians and say, hey, I trust you. I trust you, the average Canadian that has had this happen. You're using your own experiential logic to come up to the idea that, hey, I've got questions. Was it the jab? It just so happened to work with the timeline, whatever. And there's so many of these cases, right? And then, of course, you can look at the data and you can see all of that. And so, but there's those people that just say, Shawn, there's no use doing this, because look who you're doing it in front of. You're doing it in front of the people that have enabled this to happen in the first place. And I say, well, we're not doing it for them. This is how I would see it. You're not doing this for the government. You're doing this for the people. You're doing this for the victims. You're doing this to get this out far and wide. And I think we might even have a better shot at getting this out in the mainstream in other countries like the US and places in Europe who are more awake to what happened here than we will in our own country. But I still think that adds to the mass awakening of what happened and the damage and the toll that these policies and these products have had. So I gave you the two extremes. Is there anything I'm missing there? Take it away, Mr. Shawn Buckley.
I'd like to frame this a little differently and then explain kind of how the Allison inquiry came about. And what I'm hoping to experience, not accomplish, to experience, because that's different. But first of all, I view things through a spiritual lens. I actually believe we're in a battle of good and evil. And I have to tell you, before COVID, that's not the lens I used. But I am, constitutional lawyer, now working on my 31st year of practice. And I saw Canada sliding into a police state. And I saw us making decisions and doing things that the most charitable description I could use is the word reckless. Okay, that's as charitable as I can be. And I actually thought I was seeing evil, like actual tangible evil. And I, and also like you'd see Satan in public rituals. Like I think it was the Commonwealth Games just before, where they're pulling out the golden calf Baal with people dressed as slaves with chains over their backs. Like it's almost everywhere. The Super Bowl that year, everywhere. And I actually had to make a decision. It's like, okay, I'm seeing evil. And if Satan's real, then Christ is real, which means I have to make some inconvenient changes to my life. And now I firmly view that what we're experiencing is good and evil. And what I think the problem with Canada is, it was kind of like, Paul was writing in Romans that when Christ was on the earth, the nation of Israel was in a stupor. So they were unable to see, and they were unable to hear. Now, doesn't that sound like Canada to you, David? That we're in a stupor. We're not really able to see what's going on, and we're not able to really hear what's going on. And my prayer is that God will shine the light into the darkness, and that we'll actually see for the first time, that Canada will see what the truth is. And then when we see that, we're going to do things differently. You know, it's funny, like a lot of people are getting frustrated with Canada. People now expect to be poor. People expect the next generation to be poor. We've all come to accept, you know, that healthcare is small, and we can hopefully get a little portion. And we should be the most prosperous nation in the world. Like, you know, Dubai should be coming to us like cap in hand going, oh my gosh, Canada. We have oil, we have minerals, we have fresh water, we've got agriculture, we've got an educated workforce. We're not crowded. We should be the richest nation in the world. Well, we're not, because we've been making the wrong decisions or allowing the wrong decisions to happen. I actually see us as a prosperous nation. I see us as a nation that's a refuge for the rest of the world to flee to, because we're a land of freedom. And that's what I see coming. So I just want to frame this differently. Is, first of all, God's in control, and he has a destiny for this nation to be prosperous and free and a land of refuge. And, you know, so strap on your seatbelt and let's get going. So let's talk about the Allison inquiry. But first, let's talk about how hard it is to change our minds. You know, you and I, we lived, ate, breathed COVID for years. It is impossible for you or I, if someone around us says, oh, it's just diagnosed with cancer, it is impossible for you or I to not first think, oh, it's the COVID-19 vaccine. We have to remind ourselves that cancer existed before COVID-19, but I'm just using that as an example. We are in a bubble. We could regurgitate in our sleep about the PCR test and this and that. There's a large section of Canadians that are in a completely different bubble. And it's very hard to change minds. Can you imagine if you and I were starting to be introduced to the idea that actually, you know, long COVID was real? Whether COVID was a bioweapon or not a bioweapon, it's actually long COVID's real. And there's also some other cofactors that are actually a better explanation for all of these injuries. I don't know about you, but I'd be resisting that, changing my mind.
Right.
And everyone who kind of holds my worldview, the point I'm just trying to make is it's hard to change our minds. Like, we actually, when we come to believe something, we actually literally wire our brains. And we have to be in the position where we're willing to accept new information, and we're resistant to accepting information that conflicts with what we believe. There's good reasons for that, but let's accept that's the case. If we do get to the point where we're willing to change our minds literally change. They get rewired. And we've all had experiences in our personal life where, you know, maybe somebody close to you, you thought your best friend, you know, cheated on you or something like that, or something happened where we're all mad and enraged, and then we learn that wasn't the case, and our mind changes. Like, we've all had that experience. Well, there's a group out there. You referred to them as the normies. They turn on CBC. They might have it on all day. They might have CNN on all day. They might watch CTV. They'd actually learned, like those that are older, that those were reasonable news sources. And they certainly present as such. And the amount of money and effort that goes into, you know, keeping your attention and giving you the message that they want you to have is enormous, and it works. And we all have to grab into a narrative. Like, why are you and I so proud and boisterous to believe that we actually know the truth? Like, are we willing to change our minds? With these people out there, the idea that the COVID-19 vaccine has caused a lot of harm is a foreign idea to them. People know they're injured. We can't deny the fact that, whether you believe it's the COVID-19 vaccine or you believe a different narrative, people have died and people are seriously injured, and people injured that shouldn't be injured, like teenagers and kids. And the world has changed medically. Well, if you are in that group that has been fed, well, vaccine's safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, you're not even going to consider it as a possibility. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're as smart or clever as you or I. The only difference is we've been fed different news sources, and, early decisions have taken us down different paths. And then the mainstream media is talking openly about all these injuries as long COVID. And the medical experts and the authorities. Why wouldn't you believe that it's long COVID? Whether you're suspicious about what COVID is or whatever, do you understand it's a reasonable explanation within the paradigm with which they live? And we have to accept that. And we have to accept that we're in a bubble and that other people can't understand the way we think. And this is something I learned about when getting involved in the Allison inquiry. Like, I had no idea, David, how strong these bubbles are. So October 23rd of last year, my wife Teresa and I are in Ottawa delivering the third largest paper petition in Canadian history on Parliament Hill to MP Blaine Calkins so he can enter them in Parliament. We finished this great health charter tour. We're exhausted. We're planning on driving to Montreal to visit family the next day. And a friend says, you got to meet with this MP, Dean Allison. So we agreed to stay another day, and we meet with this MP named Dean Allison. And we actually, had a great meeting. Like, we resonated. He actually asked us to stay another day to introduce us to 3 other MPs that we thought we should have a relationship, or he thought we should have a relationship with. But when we're meeting with him that first day, he said, I get a lot of people coming to me talking about COVID-19 vaccine injury, and I would actually like to have an inquiry just to listen to their stories. Right? Because actually holding an inquiry is privileging them, giving them a formal setting with which to share their stories, because it's clear to them they want to share their stories. And Teresa and I, which have experience in organizing things like that, we just said, well, if you decide to do that, we may be willing to help you. And that was it. So some months go by, and then my wife, Teresa, follows up, like, kind of prods him, like, well, you had said you were interested in doing this. Are you interested in doing this? And eventually now we're having a dialogue. We're having some Zoom meetings. I remember one with one of his aides who was just so displeased with the idea that you couldn't believe it. And other phone calls and that. And then we end up having a phone call. I don't know if it's 3 months ago, probably not longer than that, where Dean is explaining to Teresa and I over the phone all the reasons why we can't do this. And the vision just simply was, at first, 3 days. 3 days of just listening to vaccine-injured persons tell their story in a formal context. Like, how non-threatening is that? But he's telling us reason after reason after reason why he can't do it. Now, he's a Christian, I'm a Christian, so I'm allowed to say what I said next. And I just stopped him and I said, Dean, you're talking about the wrong stuff. You're telling me why you can't do this. And that's not the question that needs to be answered. The only question that needs to be answered is, does God want you to do this? Like, in the Christian context, that's it. So I said, let's end the call. Like, you take as long as you need to pray about that and get back to us. And we ended the call. Well, Teresa and I thought it was done. Okay, well, that's not going to happen. We're not having an inquiry listening to COVID vaccine persons. in front of MPs. But about 10 days later, he contacts us and he says, okay, I prayed. I'm supposed to do it. And listen to this. He says, I'm supposed to do it regardless of the consequences. Because he was really worried he'd get kicked out of the Conservative caucus and now have to sit as an independent. And he was really concerned that the mainstream media would just make him look like a monkey. And, you know, a year or two ago, that would have happened with a vengeance. But he said, I believe God wants me to do this. So regardless of the consequences, I'm doing it. Okay. Let's meet in person in a week with your wife, because she's got to be on side, because we know this is going to be a ride. And then Teresa and I are praying for that week. The four of us meet and we feel, no, we're actually supposed to do this. So now the four of us are the Allison inquiry. It's not a government inquiry. Of course it's not. It's not a Conservative Party inquiry. Dean's worried he's going to get kicked out of the party.
Which is pretty crazy to think about. Like,
no, I'm going to get into this. It's not crazy because of the fear that everyone has about speaking against the vaccines. I mean, are you going to be standing in the grocery aisle today and just start a conversation beside somebody saying, you know, everyone around me is injured by this COVID-19 vaccine? You probably aren't, because some people are going to look down at you. You might still get yelled at. There's still that fear. Well, that's in our bubble. You just wait till we start talking about the MP's bubble. So we're not, we're not government, we're not conservative. We're just four people that feel we're supposed to do this, that God actually wants to speak through vaccine injured persons. And that's why I'm saying I know what I anticipate experiencing. I don't know what's going to flow from it. Well, we have no money. MPs don't have a budget. Like, I don't know how Senator Johnson does it in the States. They must have a big budget and stuff like that. No, he's got no budget for this. So of course we have to incorporate a nonprofit to organize volunteers and to act as a legal vehicle to collect donations to pay for it. We actually think, like, we're hoping to have about 40. We've got 4 days. Well, we've got to fly these people. We've got to put them up. And most of them need a couple of days to travel beforehand because they have to recover from the travel. We've got AV costs. Like, I'm a volunteer, my wife's a volunteer, but, we got to pay web guys and stuff like that. Like, so we estimate it'll be about 80 grand. We don't have that. We're like dangerously low on funds. Another reason why I think God's in it, because he never gives you what you need till you need it. So we start organizing it. We picked June 4th to announce it in a press conference. It's all we could do to get ready. In fact, the website, the French side, got finished that morning. Like, it's kind of like university final exam week type thing where you're working all night to get done. We couldn't even take donations. I mean, we didn't have banking yet or anything like that. And we announced this. Now, I have to tell you, before the decision was made to go ahead, Dean was meeting with MPs. Teresa and I were meeting with MPs to explain, hey, we're just thinking of holding a formal inquiry just to listen to the stories of vaccine injured persons. Is it even remotely possible that you could sit as an MP at the table and listen to their stories? Now, remember, Dean hadn't agreed yet. No one was agreeing to that. Not a single MP to Dean, not a single MP to us. And in discussing things with these MPs, I came to realize two things that everyone needs to understand. And it's why I had this bubble discussion beforehand. Like, we're in a bubble. First of all, I learned that MPs do not believe that they have permission in a formal setting. They can listen in their offices to vaccine-injured persons share their stories, and they are doing that. They don't actually honestly believe that it is feasible for them to sit at a table in a committee room, which is a formal setting, and listen to vaccine-injured persons tell their stories. They don't believe that any MP could do that. Like, they're surprised that Dean didn't get kicked out of the party. But they're afraid because they all watch the mainstream media. Their aides all watch the mainstream media. And we all intuitively understand that it is forbidden to question the COVID-19 vaccine. It is still officially forbidden. It's not like there's some law passed, but you know the mainstream media is going to go after you. You know, if you're a doctor, you're going to get, you tell me that a doctor in any province isn't going to get professionally disciplined if they start publicly speaking against the COVID-19 vaccine today, in the summer of 2026. Well, MPs understand this. So step one is when we're talking about this inquiry, you have to understand what's politically feasible. Like when Dean says this can go ahead, well, if we're going to ask people to volunteer, we're going to ask people to fund this, and we're going to ask MPs to attend it, we have to have some structure. So we have to draft terms of reference, and we have to draft, short rules. Like, we're only 4 days here. So it's nonpartisan. Why should this be a partisan thing? Listening to Canadians share their stories. They're not allowed to make any findings. Well, after 4 days, if you made findings, you're an idiot anyway and shouldn't have any credibility. Right? Like, really? This is a complex issue, but also to have MPs attend from other parties or even the Conservative Party, it's got to be neutral. It's got to be, no, we're not here finding blame or anything like that. We're just listening to vaccine-injured persons. Plus, the rules allow us to bring in the odd expert to help frame things, which we're going to do. Now, these MPs don't know. Like people in my bubble, why haven't they done anything? Why haven't they held an official inquiry? Why aren't the police investigating? Why aren't people losing their jobs? Why aren't people going to jail? Well, in the MPs' world, that vaccine saved 3 million Canadians. This is their world. Accept it. You can deny the truth. You can not change your mind. You can live in a bubble that's not true. In their world, the vaccine saved 3 million lives, or whatever the official figure is. In their world, a lot of people are suffering because of long COVID. Yeah, we have a health crisis. People come to them talking about some vaccine, long COVID, long COVID, long COVID. The little voice in their heads. If you want change in this nation, do you not think that maybe the MPs need to understand that the COVID-19 vaccine caused significant harm? And that we have to change the narrative? So, we're going to, because you asked me, we got the normies criticizing you this way, the Freedom Group. Well, listen, all we're presented with, Teresa and I, is the opportunity to call vaccine-injured persons in front of MPs that have no idea what's going on. And the interesting thing about this, David, is if this inquiry is allowed to proceed, and that's a question mark. There's no question God wants it to proceed. But if it's allowed to proceed, and I won't go into all the ways that it could be completely derailed, if it's allowed to proceed, whether or not that committee room is filled with MPs, all the party aides are going to be watching, and key MPs amongst all parties are going to be watching. The mainstream media is going to be watching. Some of them are going to be reporting fairly on it. So if this is allowed to proceed, for those lawmakers that we're wondering, why aren't they doing anything? Well, they're not doing anything because the vaccine saved 3 million lives, and we've got a whole bunch of problems with long COVID. Leave us alone. Until they can get to that point where they can change their mind about that, We're going nowhere. We could have this conversation in 2 years, or we could take what God has given us right now. It's the only opportunity. I don't know anyone else of all the people criticizing that are saying, well, here's how we're convincing MPs. Here's what we're doing. And then I've also learned, like, these injured people are desperate to share their stories. So we announced this on a press conference on June 4th. So people can be as mad as they want about how this is how it came about. So, we're volunteering. It means we have to put a bunch of other projects, including our working life, on hold. So there'll be significant financial costs in my household because for 3 full months, we're working more than full time as volunteers. Because we actually believe that we're in a spiritual war and that God actually wants to use this to speak through the injured. What he does with that, that's up to him. We're just called to press ahead and do what we can to put this on. But now we know that the political parties are going to watch. MPs are going to watch. And if we put pressure on MPs, they'll attend. So June 4th, we hold this press conference. And we announce what we're doing. I think if you go to AllisonInquiry.com or COVIDtestimony.com, there'll be a link to likely both press conferences. So we hold this press conference. We introduce this. A couple of interesting things happen. So Dean Allison, who does not have a big social media following, does 2 posts about the press conference on Facebook. Not X, on Facebook. He has over 1 million views. There are now people in dialogue with him and other MPs saying, I just got diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. Could it be linked to the vaccine? Like, remember, I'm in a bubble where everything's vaccine. They're in a bubble, long COVID vaccines cause no problems. So into this group that we actually need light shown into the darkness, that we need to introduce these ideas to, for the first time since COVID started, let me say that again, for the first time since COVID started, the idea that the vaccine could actually cause harm has been introduced to this group that we need to win over. Like, they need to be freed. They're suffering and they're not being diagnosed properly. And we need them with us to do this better. So we need to have a conversation with these people. We need to hear what they have to say. And they need to hear what we have to say. But this has cracked the dam. So, like, wait a second. So you mean just this teeny group of people have just decided to take an opportunity to listen to vaccine injured persons? Like, what's wrong with that? Like, regardless of what's happened before or what hasn't happened, like, if you're critical about this, we'll do something else. Like, do what you think should be done. We're not stopping anyone from doing what they think would be better, but this is just what's been placed before us to do. So now all of a sudden there's this big conversation in this group that's in a different bubble than ours, that we've all been patiently waiting to wake up. Oh, now that's interesting. Another thing interesting happens after that first press conference. Remember that Dean was totally afraid the mainstream media would make him look like a monkey. Well, there's a Liberal MP that's on the health committee, a doctor. I forget his name now. I think I don't want to remember. He was going hard after Dean. Like, where were you when I was in the emergency room saving lives during COVID? And, how dare you? This is promoting vaccine hesitancy, blah, blah, blah. Now, 2 years ago, Dean would have been group mob with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people agreeing with the doctor. Maybe even a year ago, he would have been group mob. Instead, there were two sides. There were the, how dare you? But there were actually more people saying, no, we have to have a conversation. There's something here. So it's time. We can actually have the conversation. But understand, the government doesn't want this teeny little thing that is just a small group of volunteers arranging to have vaccine-injured persons speak publicly in a formal way for 4 days. The government is terrified of this. Because if this breaks the glass and we can now have a conversation, and we no longer can be afraid of speaking of vaccine injury, where that idea is now in our consciousness, whether we accept it or not, it's there. It's part of our dialogue. It's not going away. The government's terrified of that. The government and the mainstream media has done everything they can to push off that conversation in their minds forever. But we have an opportunity now to have that conversation. And it's the first opportunity we've ever been given, ever. You tell me, what other initiative by anyone? It should have been the truckers, but the media prevailed. Because we weren't pushing back enough online when people were posting on CBC and CTV, oh, the truckers are Nazis and this and that, and look at this Confederate flag and that, and blah, blah, blah. We weren't standing up, fighting back and saying, you can't push the truckers around and you can't push us around, because you can yell and scream at me all you want. But on this one, the freedom community is absent. Oh, no, they're not absent. They're attacking the Allison inquiry. A significant portion of the freedom community is attacking the Allison inquiry. I am at a loss. I'm at a loss, David. I don't get it. If it was a government inquiry calling COVID vaccine injured persons, I would support it. Yeah, I'd be afraid of a whitewash. If it was a Conservative Party event calling vaccine injured persons, I would support it. Yeah, they're going to use it for party purposes, but I'd still expect great things. This is volunteers that, with a brave MP, are standing up to break the narrative. What on earth is the downside? And, if we don't win on social media, it might not go ahead. And we're terrorizing, the freedom community is terrorizing the vaccine injured. Now this I didn't expect. So we hold this press conference on June 4th. I think within 2 days, we get 500 applications. It's oh my gosh. And I don't know what we're at now, 700 or whatever. And we've hardly even pushed the thing. So I've learned with this type of project, you have a very small and non-threatening first form on your website, or people won't fill it in. And then what we planned was we would then send you a longer form to get more information. And right away, it became clear to us, within 2 days, we have 500 applications. Well, we might have time for 40 people if we limit them very tightly in 4 days. So most of these people, they can have super compelling stories. They're not getting on. But can we get their permission to share their written testimony as part of a record? Now, remember, we're just a small group here. We think this small, brilliant idea. Let's have this long form. There's kind of pressure from some outside groups, make it really detailed, almost like they can then use it for research. We scaled it back. The vaccine injured can't fill it in. We just got huge blowback. There were several problems. Some of them cognitively can't do it. because part of their injury is cognitive. A lot of these people are in like 24-hour-a-day pain, and they've now suffered for years. Like, we're talking 5 years. Like, this has gone on a long time, and their lives are destroyed, and they've been gaslit by the doctors. They're afraid of doctors. They're afraid of the medical community. Well, our form is like a medical form. We're asking you medical questions. Even the idea of filling out a medical form is traumatizing them. Some of them are afraid of losing benefits or medical care because we're still forbidden. This is a forbidden topic. So, I mean, we had, we ended up having meetings with some leaders in groups of vaccine injured persons where they're just expressing all of the trauma we're causing just by, having a longer form for people to fill out. I did not appreciate how fragile this community is. And then we have the freedom communities hate on. And many of them are getting traumatized by that. They'd like to feel supported in wanting to testify. Now, we had last Thursday on July 9th, our second press conference, and we had a lady named Michelle Wharton who, traveled 4,000 kilometers to be there. She's vaccine injured. She had to travel in advance so that she could recover from the flights. We had to get a wheelchair to wheel her to the podium. She did stand. People on camera can't see. She had to keep moving her legs because she's lost feeling and she's got POTS. The circulation. Those are just minor parts of what she didn't describe that. She described the intense pain and the cystic masses and having to crowd fund so she could go have brain surgery because one of these masses was compressing her brain in the US because it's not covered in Canada. She's incontinent. She's bedridden. She was a professional that ran her own business and mountain climbed. She told me privately, well, if you look at my medical records, all you'll see is I go to the hospital when I was giving birth. Her life is absolutely destroyed. And, she shares, it's funny, the press gallery just became alive all of a sudden when she started speaking, and it just tear you apart. But she was also getting ripped by the, freedom community and also some vaccine injured persons. How dare you participate in this? But she was, I first met her. She was on the phone with my wife, Teresa. She was on speakerphone and she was weeping. And she was saying, I don't think I'm going to be alive much longer. I want to tell my story before I die. And she shares, like in her community of vaccine injured persons, a lot of them are talking about accessing MAID because they just can't take it any longer. And part of their suffering is that we have shamed them and we have gaslit them and we're not treating them properly. So not only are they suffering, but they're afraid to engage and even try and get help. But they're desperate to tell their stories, as afraid and fragile as they are. And I just cannot get my head around the hatred that we're experiencing. I understand it from the powers that be that are afraid of being held responsible if we're allowed to have this conversation and introduce into the entire nation, okay, it's okay now to accept we have vaccine injury. It's no longer a forbidden topic. That's all we're hoping to accomplish. That's all that's politically feasible to accomplish. What else is anyone else doing? Before we made that announcement, nobody was talking about vaccine injury. No one in the freedom community. It was all other topics. No one outside of the freedom community. No one. Go back in time and look at social media, mainstream and freedom. Not a single person was talking about vaccine injury because it was off the table. And God decided, I want to put it on the table. I'm freeing this nation. I am freeing this nation. And part of that is creating the situation where we can have a conversation about vaccine injury. We can start caring for each other again. We can get rid of this mindset that we're poor and it has to get worse and worse and we can't care for people properly. That's nonsense. And go on. So the mainstream media, like the people that you refer as normies, if you look at the social media dialogue with regards to Michelle Wharton, like Juno News did like a 3-minute clip of her. And I think it got like 1.6 million views. That was a couple of days ago. I didn't check. And a lot of the negative comments were, well, I don't believe that it's vaccine injury. It's got to be something else. So this is, remember, if you and I were introduced to information that, no, wait a second, it wasn't the vaccine. And I can tell you, actually, there is some data coming out that would indicate that the vaccines are not responsible the way you or I think they are. But let's say we were starting to get introduced with that and actually no, long COVID really is a thing. And it's a big part of the explanation. It would take us time to accept that. And we would see in the freedom community a lot of comments, I don't accept that. But that's the first part. Like the introduction of the idea, that discussion is the first part to changing our minds. And let's say we were wrong and the evidence really was no, part of this explanation of these health effects is long COVID. Well, eventually many of us would change our minds, but it starts with that conversation where we're resisting it. That's happening now in what you call the normies. That's huge. What else could, they weren't talking about vaccine injury. So who cares that they're saying, no, Michelle's can't, they're touched by her story. They feel sympathy for her, but no, it can't be that. Well, think also, if you're vaccinated, or you vaccinated your kids, or you forced your spouse to get vaccinated, or your mom, or whatever, and now they're injured, we've got that other thing is you can't accept that you encouraged people or you were responsible for doing something that led to somebody else's harm. You got to get there, because we got to get to this place of peace and forgiveness and acceptance. Like, I mean, we got to get there. But I hope the freedom community can understand this is not a conversation that's going to come easily, but it's got to happen. And already wonderful things are happening. But the pushback, I mean, the pushback has been brutal. That I'm not talking about the freedom community. I'm talking about in the normal community. The personal attacks and harassment have just been absolutely brutal. I mean, I would use the word cruel to describe how my wife Teresa is being treated. And she's just like this. She's this kind little soul that just loves people to death. That just, she just wants to be of help. Total volunteering. Big, significant cost to her. And I mean, they're creating AI pictures of her to mock her and stuff like that. And it's trending widely. It's just cruel that what's happening with the normies, because the government doesn't want, as limited as this is, the government doesn't want this conversation. And CBC doesn't want this conversation. They have been completely silent about this. And our public health system and Health Canada don't want this conversation. And certainly the pharmaceutical companies don't want this conversation. I would have thought the only group that would want this conversation is what I call the freedom community. And I have never been more viciously attacked and opposed on any project as I am finding within the freedom community. So,
Shawn, can I just ask a real quick question here? Because this is blowing my mind. And first of all, I feel your frustration and your passion. And I love how authentic that is. I feel that. I've been feeling that this whole last 5-6 years as well. And I also can feel your frustration with this. My question would be, what's the main contention that these supposed freedom convoy people or freedom community people are levying against you? What's up their ass? What's the problem?
It's various things, and it doesn't matter. Like initially it was over a government thing that's going to whitewash. Well, again, like really you wouldn't even support a government thing. Like, wouldn't it be positive? Like, take a step back. Let's say the government announced they were going to hold an inquiry to listen to vaccine injured persons. Like, yeah, they're going to whitewash it, but isn't that still isn't that a step forward? Now we're admitting what they're not admitting now. Wouldn't that, even the announcement, be positive? Oh, it's a Conservative Party thing. Well, wouldn't that be cool if any political party decided to hold a attached to the political party inquiry listening to vaccine injured persons? Like, so what?
Any airtime is good airtime. Just having the question.
Well, and then the thing is what are you doing?
Yeah, that's the big one.
What are you doing? Like, when this is done, I'm so looking forward to doing nothing and criticizing that the few people that might be trying to do something. Well, that's got to be rewarding. No, it wouldn't be at all. I feel very, very sorry for you. You have to, if if you're in a place in your life where you think it's okay to hurt others so that you can feel better about yourself, I just, I pray a blessing for you. I truly do. You need a blessing on your life. So,
well, and that cruelty you're describing, mainly coming from sort of the pro-vaccine side here, that's just fear to me, because there's no reason for that other than the fact that they're really terrified that this might point to a truth that deep down, maybe their conscience, because I believe in a conscience. There's a conscience in there that knows the truth here. Your body.
Oh, absolutely.
Truth,
absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So that's bringing it out. The fact that you're going, hey, we're going to reopen this investigation and try to just get some data and some information that nobody's heard before. Hear the testimony of these people. This is a part of living in a democratic country, right? This is all part of, finding the truth. Isn't that what we're all about? What's wrong with that? Well, it's wrong with that because people don't want to know the truth, because the truth might point back at personal responsibility, and who the hell wants that,
Yeah. And, again, though, we have to have this conversation or because we're in trouble if we don't. So, but no, the establishment is terrified of this conversation because they know it's going to lead to changes that they don't want. And it's also going to, governments want to stay in power. And I've come to understand it doesn't matter. Liberals, Bloc, Conservatives, almost all of them don't know any of this stuff. The vaccine saved 3 million lives. We have long COVID, and it's a danger. It's actually a danger to Canadians to promote vaccine hesitancy. That's the belief. Okay, that's the belief. And that could prevail because the freedom community is, for the first time that I've ever aware, they're working with the government. They're working with the pharmaceutical companies. They're working with the mainstream media to take this down. Whereas, again, on the truckers, we should have been all over CBC and CTV and Global, the mainstream media, when, and been an army posting against, even if we were the minority, but we should have been there standing up day after day, night after night, refusing to not allow our voice to be heard. So, but we're not doing that, or very few are. And instead, for some reason, this is, threatening. There's a big panic yesterday. We have a non-disclosure agreement. If you're going to volunteer with us, I've learned from my other endeavors, you want to put a brake on people sharing your internal communications. And in this case, because the establishment is so against what we're doing, we don't want anyone to know, who certain witnesses are or any move we're going to make.
Right.
Because we really are worried about sabotage and attack. So that's not unreasonable. Some guys posting with a big following and trending how, and I don't know how you can read it this way, but, no, if you've signed this NDA, you'll never be able to share your story again, blah, blah, blah.
They're trying to sabotage.
It comes everywhere. You can't turn around without some big distraction. And, we're just doing the best we can to spend the precious time we do have trying to move this forward and make it happen. And I can just share, it's now 3 weeks ago. We're having a team meeting. So we got everyone on Zoom from our website guys. to the volunteers that are sorting through the witness applications. And I asked the volunteers who are sorting through the witness applications, how are you doing? You know, one of them just burst into tears and wept for the rest of the meeting because the stories they're heartbreaking, and you can't not read them and be heartbroken. And so what do I expect to happen when we hold this on September 4th to 11th on Parliament Hill in front of MPs with the political operatives of every single party in Parliament watching, with MPs connected to the Standing Committee of Health from every party watching, with the party whip from every party watching, with Health Canada watching, with the pharmaceutical companies watching, with all our public health agencies watching. What I expect to happen is that vaccine-injured persons are going to take the stand, and they're going to share their stories, and none of us are going to be the same ever again.
Wow. And I can say for sure, because I've done so many shows on this, I've interviewed people. I've had people approach me when I'm out walking around and tell me their stories. I've had people in my personal life that were previously on the let's just trust whatever CBC and the government is saying to go, oh my God, I can't believe that anymore. This totally changed my life, or this person in my family passed away immediately afterwards, or whatever, and all these types of things. And, you know, for everybody to just sort of say, we already know that everything is settled here. The science is settled. This is what we've always been told. The science is settled. This is that. And the whole way through, when you go back to the beginning of all the claims that were made by all the same exact agencies that are now telling everybody, don't worry, it's just long COVID. It was nothing to do with this experimental pharmaceutical product that we mandated and got you all vaccinated in Walmart parking lots or whatever. Like, it has nothing whatsoever to do with that. I'm sorry, maybe it's multiple things going on here, right? But we're not going to get to the facts of what happened for these people unless we do this conversation, like you said. And that's what I don't get. Why can't we have this conversation? And I think there's a few things here, Shawn. Let me know what you think. Oh, go ahead if you got a point.
Well, I was just going to say, I think God understands things we don't understand. So if the goal is to get this nation to the place where we can have the conversation, is there actually any other way it could be done? If it's a government inquiry, we're already divided,
right?
And it's going to be whitewashed and controlled. If it's a political party doing it, we have the same concern. Who's going to do it? Like, could you think actually of a better way than just an MP standing up saying, regardless of the consequences, I actually just feel God wants me to do this. And all we're doing is listening to people. We're not threatening anyone, but we're creating we've got a committee room where MPs and senators can come and participate and listen. Can you think of a better way to start the conversation? Like, if we could take a step back in time and we could choose any way we wanted, can you think of a better way? Because the beauty about this is even though it's not government, even though it's not connected to a party, it's going to be in a committee room on Parliament Hill in front of MPs and potentially some senators. That gives it legitimacy because it's going to be in front of MPs and senators. This is what we hoped for, is actually sharing a different perspective, a different truth with the people that can actually then start making a difference. I can't emphasize more. They believe the vaccine saved lives. They believe people are suffering from long COVID. They believe that challenging the vaccine narrative, aside from the fact that it's forbidden, could lead to vaccine hesitancy, which would lead to poor health outcomes. That's what these people that you are expecting to change the world for you believe. What else is out there to introduce a different reality to them, to even give them the ability to change their mind? Because in a formal committee setting, with vaccine-injured persons sharing their stories, they're gonna hear the truth They're going to understand these people are telling me truth. They're going to open their minds, and now they have to change. And I don't know how else it could be done now that I look back at it. Like all this criticism we have, how would you do it? I like how God's trying to do it.
And that's always, isn't that always how it goes? Everybody's got the peanut gallery going on where, the people that are out there trying something, you got to try things. People are expecting someone to go out and just make it happen, get it right to the finish line, and it all works out magically, and everybody goes to jail and the justice. And it's like, you've been watching too much TV. The reality doesn't work like that, especially in our very complicated mess that we're in Canada when it comes to our legal system, our political system, our media, as you brought up, right? And so, when you start going to real testimony from people, the question I had for you was, what would you say to people that would look at this from the perspective of, well, you've mentioned that you and the people that are doing this feel God inspired by this. But what about people that don't have that worldview? They would say, well, this is just, you're going off of your whims and your feelings and everything else. Obviously, I know that you also pack a punch as a constitutional lawyer with 30 plus years experience. So you're also bringing the testimony, and you said you're also bringing some witnesses in that can add some weight and frame things a little bit. What level of, let's say, logical data could be brought to this as value for people that maybe don't come from that religious perspective, that say, okay, we're just following the will of God here? What about, what would you say to those people that they're with you, they're open-minded, but they're like, I don't know if I like the religious talk behind this. I'd like to see something based in science, because we are challenging science after all. So they're worried that maybe the credibility might be threatened, even though that's not how I feel about it. But how would you respond to that one?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, I've gotten tired of not speaking what I actually think. And I am happy for people to disagree with me. So, but let's say some people with different belief systems were putting on an inquiry. Surely I wouldn't think to myself, well, that's going to affect the witnesses. We're not even asking witnesses what their belief is. Like, we don't care about that. We just want compelling stories about vaccine injury. And I'm not even involved in that selection. I mean, it's volunteers that, have criteria, and they're sorting through all of those, and they're making the decisions. Why would I make those decisions? I'm not sorting through all of those forms. Let those that are experts in all those forms make those decisions. And, MPs attending and questioning, I don't know what their religious backgrounds are going to be. I'm assuming most of them are, atheists or could care less. So yeah, some of the organizers have religious beliefs, myself included. And that's how we got there, but who cares? We're basically set up a website, which if you look is not religious. We're calling for witnesses with forms that are nothing but what happened.
You're making it nonpartisan politically, which also shows you're not just coming with some conservative agenda here.
It has to be. Like, I mean, remember, well, first of all, we were worried Dean would get kicked out of the party. So, but we wanted it nonpartisan anyway, because this isn't a partisan issue. This shouldn't be conservative versus liberal. We're like, what? The liberals can't accept this and change policy course because now it's a political thing? Like, that wouldn't be good for the nation.
Right.
And anyway, like, no. And, and like I say, we need this conversation as a nation. So, but the one thing I feel compelled to say, for a lot of people are just negative. I don't know, somehow they get off being negative. And we've really lost civil discourse with social media. I mean, people will be, rude and angry and demeaning in ways that they never would in person. And they never would even if they had to write a letter. But somehow that forum has depersonalized us. And I think we need to understand, if we're going to make this a better nation, when we're having these dialogues, stop depersonalizing this even on social media. And then, do you think that your actions don't have a consequence? I mean, I know as a fact that a lot of the negativity has traumatized the vaccine insurers. It has traumatized some of the volunteers. It has traumatized me. It has traumatized my wife. There's a cost. You're actually attacking. Well, attacks hurt. Like, do you not understand that attacks hurt? I had heard two different people share Arthur Pileski's dream, and we're there right now. So I called Arthur myself and I said, I've heard two different people talk about this. I said dream, but really it's a vision that he had. And I said, I want to hear it from you, Arthur, so that I don't have it wrong. And so he explained it to me, and he said what his vision was, and this was pre-COVID, not long before COVID, is there's this fence that just goes into the horizon as long as the eye can see. Wonderful symbolism here. And everyone in the world is sitting on the fence, which again, it's just wonderful symbolism. Because they don't want to choose to be on one side of the fence or another. They want to enjoy the benefits of both sides of the fence. So they're sitting on the fence. And then God's hands come down and grab the fence, and he starts shaking, and that fence is whipsawing, and everyone's having to hang on. God doesn't stop. He just keeps shaking. And at the end of the vision, there's nobody left on the fence, but people got to choose. They knew they were going to fall off. They can't sit on the middle anymore, but they got to choose which side of the fence they fell to. And clearly this was a vision from God, and it's a sorting. And Arthur also said at the end of the shaking, everyone else also knew which side of the fence everyone else was on. I believe that's where we are right now. I believe that God is actually in the process of restoring Canada to the freest nation in the world and the most prosperous nation in the world, but he's having to sort us. You know, for those in the freedom community, they'll accept that every college of physicians and surgeons was compromised, every public health agency was compromised, that enormous sums went into planning and media propaganda and all of this. But they didn't infiltrate the freedom community. They'll spend hundreds of billions of dollars. They'll plan for decades, but they didn't think of inserting people in the freedom community. Now, if you're going to be inserted in the freedom community, what you do is you start doing freedom things. You have to establish street creds. So there are people in the freedom community that legitimately have stepped in and done significant things, but they're state agents.
I agree, 100%. Yeah.
And this one's a hot button. I think this one is part of the fence being shaken. I think God's so going to speak through these witnesses at the Allison inquiry that, you know, it's just going to be clear he had his hand in it. And our decisions here are not without consequence. And the way we speak and treat with people, because you can disagree, but stop being vile and vicious, because you're better. You're better than that. You can disagree, but disagree with love. Just like you'd like others to disagree with you with love.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, no, that's so powerful, because in my opinion, when people are treating you and the witnesses and anybody that's involved in trying to, I don't know, get to the bottom of it and spread the information and wake people up and have the voices heard and just do something about it. If they're coming at those people with cruelty, that to me just shows how absolutely petrified those people are of the truth coming out. And there's something about, I think so many people are traumatized. I think a lot of people have PTSD. I feel like I've got a little bit. I think everybody does. That was a absolutely historic timeline. And it's gotten only more insane ever since too. Don't forget, I feel like we've got all these things exploding around us because we are in this time of, I believe we're in an age of revealing, like you said, the shaking of the fence. And also the truth is being shown and uncovered. The truth that has been hidden, that needs to be known, right? The truth that needs to be known, because it's the truth that sets you free, right? And those that are trying to get to the truth are always historically the most viciously attacked, even by those in their own camp, right? And there are those insidious agents that come in and they're the wolves in sheep's clothing, right? Like we're learning about, we just had Rupert Lowe on Joe Rogan talking about the Fabian Society and the symbolism with that and the whole strategy of wolf in sheep's clothing. And, all of this happens. Of course, these movements that are organic, they get captured. We saw it with a lot of movements in the past. So that's to be expected. But what's not to be expected is average people that were experiencing what we've all experienced, that are picking a gripe with you instead of the people responsible for what really happened. And that's where I try to center my show and my information, is to try to show people this goes way bigger than even any of the captured elements within the government of Canada or the medical services. This is an age-old war between truth and lies, good and evil, light and darkness, if you will. And people can come at that from any angle they want. But I think we're seeing the evil that we were refusing to look at for so long is coming out, whether we like it or not. So it's coming. And with it is justice. And justice not just coming from the legal system. I believe that there's a justice that happens when truth is shown. When truth is shown, there's a natural justice that happens. Call it God's justice, God's law, right? But people are terrified of that, because even if they might be on your side about challenging these authorities and exposing these truths to a certain degree, they just might not like the way you're doing it. And that's enough for them to come after you, right? Because they're afraid inside. And this isn't a time for fear. This is a time for action. And I think people, myself included, everybody's been wondering, what do we do? What do we do with what happened with the pandemic? What happened with these vaccines? What's the truth about it? We got to find the truth about it. And we need to deal with the consequences. What's going on with our economy? What's going on with all these other issues? I think they're all related. I don't think these are all separate little things going on. I think that COVID was one of the weapons used. I believe the vaccine was another one of the weapons used. And I believe the ultimate weapon, no matter where that lands scientifically as to what happened with COVID, the policy changes to our countries are a weapon that have been used. And this keeps leaking into all the issues that everybody in the freedom movement pretty much agrees on to a certain degree. So when you're in there like, well, let's fire a few shots back with getting the truth out, because the truth is the ultimate haymaker punch, man. And so any shot at getting the truth out there, at least to the best of your ability, everybody's honor bound and duty bound to do that. And again, I'll wrap with this one. Don't go after the man in the arena. Why are you going after the man in the arena when you're doing nothing yourself but sitting there bickering online, spreading a bunch of vile nonsense, attacking people, and you've got no better solution? The only thing people are what are you dreaming up? Like you're just going to go and violently overthrow the government or something? Like, what are you going to do? And I feel like that has happened to the freedom movements all across the West, Shawn. I've been looking at this from many angles, where I think legitimate resistance to all these rises in tyranny that people have been seeing, there's the legitimate resistance, and then that has slowly also been captured in many different ways. And this is just another example of that exact thing happening. But I love your positivity. I love that you're still saying, because I believe the same thing, but the truth wins, guys.
Oh yeah,
right?
no, obviously.
In the end.
I'm just making the point. Like, if we think that the freedom movement isn't infiltrated, and that, there are people that we respect as freedom warriors, well, that's how you do it. Is if you're a state agent, you go and you're a freedom warrior for a while, you get your street creds, you get leadership positions, and then, you basically get to slow things down from the inside and sabotage from the inside. And if something's important, to create resistance against it. So, it's unfortunately part of the cost of doing business. So I shouldn't be surprised, but I am, because I was expecting, like, nobody was talking about vaccine injury. Freedom community, what you call the normies, nobody was. And this inquiry put it back on the table, and it needs to be on the table. And we need to have this conversation. And I would welcome everyone to be doing their own initiatives to do that. So, but please don't sabotage this one.
No, nothing but support, Shawn. Like for me and anything I can do from where I'm at to help get that information out, whether I can be on the ground or whether I can be here covering it and spreading it and live streaming it and sharing the clips and sharing the stories. I want to do that. And there's many others that are going to do it. And I will be approaching friends of mine in the podcasting world to, get on their horse and try to get this out there. I think that's so crucial. And, I know I can only imagine the kind of shots you and your wife and your team are dealing with, but stay the course. You've got that faith, you've got that fire, you've got that experience, you've got that knowledge, and you do have the support across the country. I think we're also hearing like a lot of the stuff online. Sometimes I wonder how many of these are real people, how many of these are bot farmed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so, and there, I know because I speak to people that are outside of my bubbles all the time, and I don't initiate these conversations. These are people that come up to me to tell me their story, their concerns, the fact that they doubt what they're being told by a lot of these, government agencies and the media. And so this kind of thing can happen. And there's a statement, I think it was Steve Jobs that said it. People don't know what they want until you show it to them. People don't know what they want until you show it to them. So all I'm here to say to my audience, give Shawn and his team a chance to show you what they've got. Let's get this to the finish line. Let's get these people out there to tell their stories. It's only going to help everybody get more clarity. It's only going to help spread the information and keep the dialogue going. So even for those of you out there that say, well, it's just absolutely not the vaccine. It is that thing was the elixir of life and it's my holy sepulcher. Hey, whatever. Just let's have the conversation, because at the end of the day, people are suffering, people are dying. I find it very convenient that MAID came online after the pandemic, right? I think that's really questionable, but that's just my thinking. To what you were saying earlier is just horrifying to think about. But either way, no matter where you end up, don't you want to know the truth? I mean, think about it. I talked about this for years when I was comparing this. You remember those little bumbo seats for kids? Like they're like those little rubber seats for infants and toddlers to start learning how to sit up straight. My wife had one with my daughter when she was growing up. There was like 1 or 2 instances that were reported where a kid fell out of the bumbo seat and sadly passed away because of that. And they immediately recalled all the bumbo seats. I mean, even the seats you put in your car for your child protective safety, you have to renew, you got to get a new renewed one all the time because there's just so much regulation about it. And if any of these think of all the products that have just been ripped off the shelves for even just a few instances of injury or death. And yet we're all just going, oh, but the holy big pharmaceutical industry that has more fraudulent instances than any other organization. They have bigger lobbies than all of government combined. They're the most powerful organization on the earth. As we have from insider testimony, I could sit here for the rest of the show talking about it, saying, yeah, it's compromised. There's conflicts of interest. There's fraudulent scientific data. We could keep going on and on. At the very least, don't you want to know? Don't you want to hear about it? Because the only way to repair the damage is to know the facts, right? I'm not afraid of the fact. I would change my mind if it was concrete evidence that came out and said, yep, guys, it wasn't the shot. It was the long COVID, all that. I absolutely would, because I'd want to know what the truth is. I'm willing to do that. Are you willing to say also, hey, wow, compelling testimony. Wow, compelling data and scientific observation. Maybe there's something here. Let's investigate further. Let's also heal the divide in this country with this issue and across the world. This is a world. I mean, it's happening in Canada, thank God, but this is happening around the world, Shawn. This was not just something located here. So when you combine all of that and all the efforts in other countries have banned this thing, right? Why? They did their own inquiries and they ended up going, yeah, looks like there's some risk we don't want to tangle with. So I think that we should pursue the foundation of our society, which was the inquiry for the truth, challenging authority, not just trusting, especially trusting known fraudsters and corrupt organization and actors just blindly. We should listen to the testimony. We should give you guys your day in the public court of inquiry. I'm thrilled to hear that there could be some MPs and senators sitting in on that. That would be great. And maybe this could only be just the beginning. Do you ever think about that? That maybe this could open up other avenues in this battle for the truth?
I think clearly, step one is let's give the nation permission to have the conversation, which is what this inquiry should do. And step two is to see where it goes from there. If I can add, there's some things that people can do. So go to AllisonInquiry.com, which actually takes you to covidtestimony.com. If you're vaccine injured, fill out our form, because even though you don't have to want to testify, you don't have to be selected to testify, but we want to have a written record. We want you to consent to, okay, we can include what you write as part of the record, because it's more compelling if, we have 40 witnesses, but we can then file as part of the record maybe 1,000 or 2,000 stories. If you know somebody who's vaccine injured who is dead and can't tell the story, apply for them. If you know somebody who's vaccine injured and isn't dead but is unwilling to do it, ask for permission. Don't do it without their permission. Ask for permission to share their story. If you know somebody who's vaccine injured who wants to apply, help them, because we've learned that they can't do the second form. They do the first form they can do, then they're going to get an email linking them to the second form. They need help. So, and then we have on the Allison Inquiry instructions about how to approach your MP and ask them to be there. And the best way is if you're vaccine injured, go and say, I'm vaccine injured, I want you to go. Or, take a vaccine injured person with you. If you're not willing to go, phone. And if you're not willing to phone, we have sample letters. But if the MPs know that their constituents are wanting them to attend, then we're going to have more attend. So, and then donate. We're short, we're 6 weeks out. We're way short. We need to fly these people. We need to get them there. Let it not be that, Canadians didn't step up to pay for vaccine injured persons to fly to Ottawa to tell their stories. That would be a shame to us all.
And they can donate right on the website, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're set up now. We weren't at the first press conference because things take time, but we're set up now. And then make sure you watch. And, if you have any, we're going to set it up so anyone and their dog can live stream. CBC's not going to show up. CTV's not going to show up. But we're going to have a lot of alternative media there, and some significant alternative media. And we're going to set that up so everyone streams. And then they don't matter anymore anyway. And this will be a demonstration of that. So we can collectively get it out there to the world just simply by streaming it on our own channels.
Well, Shawn, I just want to thank you so much for jumping on, for taking on this fight. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to go through it, to put risk at yourself and your income and your family and all the things going on. Your lovely wife, who I've met, she's just wonderful. And I just wish you guys the best, and we'll be keeping you in my prayers and my hopes and my content. I'll be putting you guys out there. And if you ever need to come on and do any quick updates, or we can get some of these witnesses on here as well to share their stories, my platform is open. I'd love to have you. And just want to say, I deeply support and admire and respect what you're doing against all odds. Those are the heroes I look up to, the people that go against the raving mob, whether they like it or not, in service of trying to get to the truth. You couldn't ask for anything better. I love that it's independent. I love that it's, nonprofit, and that you are still able to break that glass ceiling and get a few of these MPs in there. And may this go off with a bang. May this take the internet by storm. I've got people watching my show that come from all over America, Europe, all over. Share this out. It's happening in Canada, but it can happen in your country. And this story can spread in the same way that I believe that trucker convoy inspired millions around the world. And it started the process of ending those ridiculous lockdowns. And the egregious, I can't even, I won't even go on anymore on it, because I'll just get all off hot and bothered. But it does my heart good, Shawn, to see people like you out there doing this. And I just want people to listen to you. I want them to listen to these witnesses, go follow up, donate, help this man out, help this project out. And let's get this thing done. And for all the people that are sick and tired of hearing about it, too bad. We have to know the truth. This has to be resolved. This is a dire consequence to our society moving forward that we're going to be handing to our children. Should we not be able to resolve this? This has to be resolved. It can be resolved. And once again, I'm also touched by your positivity about Canada, that we can be that prosperous country, that we can be oriented towards freedom and truth again, and that we can resolve these past grievances, and we can show the truth. So may your inquiry take this internet by storm and silence all the doubters. And thanks for joining me and coming on to share with me today, Shawn.
Thanks for having me on, David.
My pleasure. We'll do it again. And thanks to all of you who listened and commented. I see your comments. Sorry we couldn't get to them. You're already sharing your stories in there. Take your comment and put it in the Allison inquiry and tell your story and share it far and wide. And I'll be doing more content in the future on this. So thanks to you all. And thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers, everybody.